For this Nonsense Wars episode, I have revised my GBC variable batch module. I originally wanted a module to test other modules, and I incorporated features like an input reservoir, an integrated ramp, and of course, the variable batch mechanism. The module subsequently became very big and somewhat flimsy, and only the batch mechanism ever worked well. Running GBC at Bricks by the Bay finally gave me the motivation to fix it, along with some other older modules. First and foremost, I really wanted to shrink the module, but I can't shrink the batch mechanism itself since each lane needs to hold 15-ish balls. Nonetheless, as with the vertical shooter, I could utilize some of the space above the input and knock some studs off the end of the module, though this reorganization required moving the vertical steps to the side. The new layout seems weird, but loading and unloading balls on the same side also means they don't need to route around the countershaft. The single-step loaders I used in this and other past modules often had trouble generating sufficient agitation with a pretty full or even overflowing input bin. This made the reservoir pretty much useless in the first version. Along with moving the lift, I split the main crankshaft and added more loading steps such that they agitate the entire front edge of the input bin. Speaking of the input bin, I made it a bit smaller than before, but it can still hold more than 100 balls, which I deemed sufficient for a reservoir. It just needs to buffer the module and add surface area for tossing in balls. I added the folding extension to the lift side such that feeder modules could interface more easily if this module needs to turn a corner. Speaking of turning corners, the integrated output ramps proved finicky to store and unreliable to use, so I removed them entirely. Instead, I decided to rely upon my existing ramp system, which has proven mostly practical and mostly reliable over the past few years. I can also connect another module directly under the output with or without shared power. Speaking of shared power, the module has connectors at both ends running at my standard 1:5 reduction. The lift runs slightly slower, as with all my vertical stepper variants, but it should get close to 1 ball per second on a regulator. In practice, I don't really use the shared power with more than a couple modules, but I still like the idea of having it everywhere. I only made minor modifications to the variable batch mechanism itself. I added bushings showing where to place the stopper for batches of 4, 8, 12, etc., up to the max of 28. Previously, I had to guess and check the positioning every time I changed the batch size. I also added a manual bypass such that the module can output a stream if desired. Furthermore, the lift section can detach and operate by itself, effectively becoming a vertical stepper version 3 with improved loading and better structural integrity at the cost of using more parts and more space. The batch mechanism could also theoretically work with other lifts, perhaps with some modification, and it also has improved structural integrity, partly from not having to carry the folding ramps. The two halves join with a shared power connector, slightly offset due to the offset output from the vertical steps. The position of this joint creates a somewhat noodly drivetrain on the batch side, but the universal jointed shaft does not transmit much torque anyway. I try to phase the two halves such that the batch sensor opens as a ball rolls through. Balls like to stall if they hit the sensor while closed. Overall, I did not manage to shrink the module as much as I might have liked, but I do think all the various functions work better in version 2. I think the aesthetics became a little cleaner as well. We shall see if things like increased modularity actually have any use, but on that note, this is the end of the video. Please consider subscribing if you like what we do, and have a nice day.